Greetings, everyone. My name is Rodney Brown, and I am a Family Engagement Coordinator with Youth Guidance. Welcome to the second video in our Wellness Wednesday series on the Youth Guidance YouTube channel. Last week, Della Ezel, my program manager, did a great job in introducing something that we call the PIES check-in process. And if you haven't watched that video yet, I would strongly encourage you to go to the Wellness Wednesday playlist on this YouTube channel and watch Miss Ezel's video presentation. It's very good. Today we're going to talk about the topic of stress management in the context of COVID-19. You know, stress management is always something good for us to learn about and apply at any time in our lives, but what I've learned in preparation for this particular presentation is that the levels of stress and anxiety that people are experiencing at this time in our lives and in our society, it's much more intense and pronounced than it usually would be, and is cutting across all segments of our society. Let me describe some real-life scenarios for you, and my guess is you will probably find yourself relating to at least one of these situations. Perhaps you personally know someone who has tested positive for COVID-19, and that might even be yourself or someone very close to you. Maybe you know someone, and this is on a more tragic and sad note, but maybe you do know someone personally who has died as a result of being infected by the coronavirus. People are uncertain at times about whether they have the virus, especially if they haven't been tested. So as we experience these symptoms like coughing and sneezing and shortness of breath, tightness in our throat or chest, sore throat, fever, if we experience any of these things or see those around us experiencing those things, we're wondering, do I have the virus? Do the people I know have the virus? And then we hear all these large numbers of people in our city or state and in our country and throughout the world who've been affected by this virus, infected by the virus, and who have actually died from the virus. That's a scary thing when you hear about all these large numbers, and it creates this sense that the virus is trying to take over our country and our world, invade our homes, and kill us. It's almost like being at war. And so that's a very stressful thing to experience and to feel. Then there's the challenge of just trying to obtain the things that we need to live our everyday lives. And we're wondering, how am I going to get these things safely? Should I go to the store? Is it safe to do that? Should I just order online or use my phone app to get the things that I need and use these different delivery systems and delivery services? And then you wonder, are the stores and retail establishments going to have the things that I need? And things like sanitizing products are hard to come by. Gloves and masks, things like toilet tissue and paper towels. Months ago, we would have never thought that it would be hard to get those things. But right now, it can be hard to get things like paper goods and water and certain food items. And then there's those who have lost their jobs. Either you might have lost your job, or someone that you know, a spouse or significant other, a family member, and that income has been important to that household and that family, and now it's gone or greatly reduced. And even if you are still working, you're wondering, how much longer will I be able to work? Will I be able to maintain my job, or will I lose my job, and what might that mean? And so there's all these financial and economic concerns in our households and for our whole country and world. Are we going to slide into a major recession or a depression or some sort of global economic meltdown? And then there are people who feel claustrophobic almost in their homes, confined and constrained from this stay-at-home order and social distancing. And so people feel confined and isolated, and that's not a good feeling. Or there are people who are needing to work, and they work in an industry where they're in the public venue, like a store or some sort of retail establishment, a medical facility, or some other type of work in which they're out in the public and they're wondering, am I going to get this virus from people or give it to people? And I can go on and on. But obviously, as we go through these things, it increases our level of stress. And we can feel really stressed out by all of it. So that's the nature of the problem, and that's the difficult part. That's what you and I face every day that adds to our anxiety. But what can we do about it? How can we apply techniques and strategies that actually effectively help us manage the level of stress and anxiety that we experience during this time in our lives. The first thing that we could do, it seems obvious, but we could just acknowledge and admit the fact that we're stressed out at times and that we're having this anxiety. Own up to it. Don't try to deny it or pretend that you're not experiencing it. Talk about it with your loved ones and the people that you love and trust and respect. The pies check in is a great way for doing that. But just acknowledge that we sometimes get stressed out by this. Relaxation and meditation techniques are very powerful ways. We've known about that for years. Powerful ways of reducing or minimizing the level of stress that we experience in our life. And I'd like to recommend one type of technique that you can look up, find more about it. We don't have time to break it down now, but I would encourage you to look up the relaxation response by Dr. Herbert Benson. Again, the relaxation response by Dr. Herbert Benson. I've been trying that. You can find it on YouTube or Google it. A very effective way to manage the stress by a specific relaxation and meditation practice. A lot of experts are recommending grounding techniques because when you and I are under stress and we experience panic and anxiety, our minds tend to lose track of the here and now, and it can wander off into thoughts that intensify actually our physical anxiety by taking us to places where our mind really does not need to go. It just creates more problems for us. And an example of a grounding technique is called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. And here's how it goes. You list 5 things you can see, 5 things you can feel, 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. I've done that a few times. It really does ground me in the here and now and get my mind off of its tendency to wander. Exercise and movement is always a good way to fortify our bodies, and it could be something as simple as walking, taking walks in our neighborhood, using social distance practices. But it also could mean more intense things like running, workouts in the home, using equipment that you probably haven't used in a while. But at any time we can exercise and move, it strengthens our body, makes us feel better of ourselves, creates chemicals in the body that actually have healing properties, stress reducing properties, wellness properties. So exercise and movement is always a good thing to do, as well as nutrition and eating well. And I remember a phone conversation I had with a coworker about a month ago, and I was talking about some physical symptoms I was having, particularly related to my stomach being upset. And he said, "Mr. Brown, it sounds like to me you need to start cooking again and doing the things that you used to do and when you were eating better and cooking better." And I thought about it, and I said, I am going to do that. I'm going to make better meals. I'm going to start using supplements, nutritional supplements that I know really do work for me. And within a couple of days, I felt 100% better. And I attribute it to the fact that I was eating a lot better. Another thing we can do is to educate ourselves on the specific symptom patterns of COVID-19 and especially how it contrasts with the distinct symptoms related to anxiety and stress and panic. I found this to be particularly useful because COVID-19 does have a specific symptom pattern that seems to be consistent with people, particularly as they get worse medically and get into a situation where their health is and their life is really at risk. It's not the same pattern for everyone, but there are some typical things that tend to be true of people who are infected with the virus, and particularly as their health gets worse. Those symptoms can be contrasted with the symptoms related to stress and panic and anxiety. And you can do a search on coronavirus and stress or anxiety and the coronavirus. Those kind of searches will lead you to articles and videos that help break down the difference between feeling stressed and having the coronavirus, because some people get confused. Their anxiety symptoms are mimicking some of the same responses that they might get or symptoms they might get from the coronavirus. Another thing we could do is as we implement other best practices that have been strongly recommended to help diminish the spread of the virus, we have a greater sense of control over our routines and the fact that we're doing our best to protect ourselves from the virus. So things like social distancing, wearing masks, using gloves, washing our hands properly with the right technique, disinfecting things like surfaces, credit cards, doorknobs, keys, a variety of things that we can do to clean the things that we use on a regular basis, or where we put our hands. How we take care of items that we bring into the home from the store, and dealing with our shoes and clothes after we come in. In other words, we can develop sound and healthy routines that help us navigate how we go inside and outside of our home. It gives us a greater sense of control and a responsibility on the fact that we're doing everything we can to minimize our risk. But even so, in doing the research about this virus and learning more about the things we can do to protect ourselves, we should limit the amount of information that we're taking in, particularly in a short period of time. People can get overwhelmed by this information and all these statistics and all these news updates. And so while we're learning about the virus in measured ways, it's really also important to limit our exposure so we don't feel information overload and just get stressed out by all the things that we're learning. It's important to maintain positive and productive connections with our loved ones, our family and friends. And here's a quote that's worth remembering. Social distancing does not have to mean social isolation. So it doesn't mean that we have to eliminate being around people or stop being around people. It just means that when we do find ourselves around people, we use that 6 feet rule, a minimum of 6 feet distance between ourselves and others, wearing a mask preferably, and using alternative means of communicating like phone calls, individual calls, and group conference calls. And for phones that use FaceTime, you can do that, or other video chat applications. Virtual conferencing, using our phone or tablet or computer, all these other creative ways that people are finding to be able to connect with people even though we're not in their presence. Again, social distancing does not have to mean social isolation. And then finally, many people are finding the joy of having the flexible time now, or the benefit, I should say, of having the flexible time of pursuing hobbies and priorities and projects and goals that sort of fell by the wayside or fell off their radar screen, and now they have the time, even job tasks that kind of we get behind on. Having this flexible time, or downtime as sometimes people call it, gives us an opportunity to pursue things that are really important to us, and to enrich our lives and reconnect us with things that really are valuable to us. And so in conclusion, I hope that these ideas have been helpful to you as you manage the natural and understandable stress and anxiety that the COVID-19 crisis has generated. And again, I would encourage you to look at Della Ezel's video from last week, because that PIES check-in is a powerful process for sharing our feelings with those that we know and love. The Mental Health Division of the Illinois Department of Human Services, IDHS, has launched a free of charge emotional support text line called Call for Calm. CALL, the number 4, CALM, Call for Calm. And you can do a search online about that. It's for Illinois residents experiencing stress and mental health issues related to COVID-19. So I would encourage those who feel like they need some support to reach out for that. This is Rodney Brown signing off for today and encouraging you to be safe and be well. Thank you so much for listening. Bye now.